Everyone, hello. I will now call the October 23rd Planning Commission meeting to order. Mike, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I will do my best.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Is there an motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Is there a motion to review and approve the minutes held at the September 17th Planning Commission meeting?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We will now hear from the public hearing for a conditional use permit request by Melvin Garrison III for the Highway Business District located at 0 King Avenue. And I will hand it over to staff.
Good evening. So yes, this application originally came before you all in early May of this year. This is a conditional use permit for townhouses in the HB district, and it is that location that is across from William Perry and behind the Food Lion on King Avenue. The original concept plan was for 79 townhouses on that 9.471 acre parcel. This was that original concept plan that the applicant submitted and that you saw last May. Another look at it. And so at that Planning Commission meeting in May, a public hearing was held, and Commission voted to recommend approval to Council for that conditional use permit. In June, the application was tabled by Council due to concerns about using commercially zoned property as residential, and then also concern about the continued need for more affordable housing. So between June and now, the city and the applicant have been in discussion with each other, and the applicant has made two amendments to their application. The first was that they would add 5,000 square feet of office space as a way to address concerns about taking otherwise commercially zoned property and using it as residential. So to help address that concern, they are now adding 5,000 square feet of office space, and then also to help address the concerns about the housing affordability need that is still there. The applicant has said that they will construct 4 townhouse units that could be sold to the Virginia Statewide Community Land Trust, and those houses would be available to families to buy at 80% of area median income. And in the SAW region, our region, that is about $71,900 a year. That's the annual salary per the most recent HUD data. And they are still proposing those 79 townhouse units. So here is a look at that revised concept plan. It looks very similar to the original concept plan that you saw before. However, right here, they have added that 5,000 square feet of office space right off of King Avenue right here. And then just quickly, what is a community land trust? This is a concept that's meant to keep homes affordable for qualifying home buyers in perpetuity. So what happens is the land trust acquires the property and then sells the house itself to a qualified buyer while keeping ownership of the land. And the owner of the house leases the land through the land trust and is then able to build equity in that house. They have a mortgage, they can build equity in the house, and then when they go to sell it, that ground lease determines how that house increases in value and ensures that it remains affordable to another qualified buyer, so that when the seller goes to sell that house, another income qualified buyer can then purchase that house and they can take out any equity they've built, and therefore keeping the home in affordable for future home buyers. Virginia now has a statewide community land trust. It was created in 2001, and it is a nonprofit organization, and its goal is to seek to develop and maintain permanently affordable homeownership opportunities for low and moderate income households. And this is the first land trust that is operating statewide. So very, very quickly, that's sort of a high-level overview of what the land trust model is. So with that and the amendments to the application, staff is recommending approval of this UP with the following conditions. The first three were part of the original application, that the development be developed in a general conformance with that concept plan, that it be built to the area and dimensional standards of the RMF district, and that they keep that boulevard-style entrance in and out, since right now it has just one entrance into the development, and then finally, that they include that 5,000 square feet of business and office space in the development. So with that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Can you go back to your, community land trust slide? All right, the original homeowner buys the property through the land trust, and then another buyer buys a house. What happens when that buyer sells that house? Does it stay in perpetuity? Because there was something like this out in Colorado, and with any good intentions, somebody's gonna figure out a loophole in the system. And what happened out there in some instances, people would buy the house, the bank would foreclose on the house, and then it was gone out of the quote land trust or I forget what they called it out there, the affordable housing thing, and then it went back on the market at market prices.
So the 99-year ground lease that is entered into with the land trust creates a formula and a model that specifically limits the ability for a person selling to just get market rate for it. So it identifies what that increase in value can be. And so that is something that is worked out through the ground lease. These do operate throughout the state, throughout the country. This one is a statewide land trust so that the city is not having to prop up its own organization or its own land trust, and would be able to utilize this model and the statewide assistance for these 4 units. But yes, there are protections and provisions in place that do keep the land affordable in perpetuity.
Now, this isn't, pardon me, I'm old, this isn't Section 8, is it?
So, no, so and in your staff report, there's a specific workup related to kind of what numbers we would be talking about.
Okay.
So for as Allison mentioned, for 80% of area median income for a family of 4, that's currently a family of 4 making $71,900. And based on calculations that the statewide land trust has done, a family at that income level could afford a house priced at approximately $203,639 with a 3% down payment. So essentially what this model is looking at is for kind of the segments of our economy, working individuals, and with the housing prices the way that they are maybe unable to have home ownership, and this would allow them to do that. So you can think of your teachers, your firefighters, your police officers. So it is a subsidy in some way of housing by taking out that land price, but there are obviously many different subsidies and degrees of subsidies, but this is just one segment of the affordability model that we're trying to provide.
So the owner of the house doesn't have to resell. I mean, they
Sure, it's just if they ever were to resell, they couldn't, they couldn't take that home that they got at an affordable rate and make the full market rate on it.
okay, so they're, all right, so as far as a deed, since they're leasing the land, they won't get a deed to the land at all.
Right.
Right, okay,
So it's taking the land value out of that transaction essentially.
right, right.
And building equity still in your home, and then able to take that equity with you, but obviously capped to create affordability for future home buyers.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to?
We do need to
Oh,
hold the
open the
public
public
hearing,
hearing.
sorry.
Sorry, no, thank you. Okay, if there's no other comments from the commission, I'll open it up for a public hearing.
And the applicant is here.
Okay. Would the applicant like to speak towards the?
Good evening. My name is Lee Garrison. Happy to see you again. As Alice-Ann said, I was here back in May and did receive a recommendation for approval from you guys. But when I got to council, there were questions that Alice-Ann said about, the office, the commercial property, and affordable housing. And I want to kind of thank the staff here. I'm excited about the land trust because projects I've done, affordable housing always comes up. And me as a developer, what do you mean by affordable housing? You guys as a city go, what do we mean by affordable housing? But this land trust, I think it's not their first rodeo. They've figured out how to do things. They've got lenders they work with because with the land lease, there are a lot of different things and they've already figured it out. So I'm excited to be a part of that. I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you.
Thank you. And I'm assuming there's no one signed up to speak for the public hearing?
No.
Okay, I will close the public hearing. And is there a motion to adopt the conditional use permit as stated by staff with its 4 conditions being added?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Next on the agenda, I will move it to staff to hear the public hearing for preliminary subdivision plat requested by Scott Williams for a Crescent development.
Okay, so this is a preliminary plat request for the Hopeman and King subdivision. It is located on King Avenue right at its intersection with Hopeman Parkway, so right across from the DMV and Food Lion Shopping Center. So this is a proposal on 8.364 acres. It's currently undeveloped. Look at the surrounding land uses. You've got the Parkway Village, Smith Farm to the north. You have the Heritage Hill Bed and Breakfast to the east, Kingsway to the south, along with William Perry Elementary, and then, of course, the DMV and the Food Lion off to the west. So this is a major subdivision preliminary plat that is by right with no waivers requested. There's no city discretion to deny it as long as the applicants have satisfied the requirements of the ordinance. This particular plat is for 80 townhouse units on the property. They will be providing some street trees along Hopeman Parkway and King Avenue. They will also, of course, be included in the interior development. They will also be installing a playground as part of the development. This is a look at the overall layout of the subdivision. You see 2 entrances off of King Avenue here. There will be a future interparcel connection provided on the eastern side of the property. This is the side of the property that borders up to Heritage Hill. And then also this is the location of that small playground that the applicants will be providing. This property is zoned RMF, which is our multifamily residential zoning. It does have a 2,000 square foot minimum lot size for townhouses, along with a maximum density of 10 units per acre. All the lots on the preliminary plat do meet these requirements. Density is right about 10 units an acre, and the lot sizes do range from about 2,000 to 4,900 square feet. The comprehensive plan designates the property as high-density residential, and the proposed use is consistent with the designated use. Getting into traffic and access, the development will be accessed from King Avenue at 2 different locations, and as I said, there's also an interparcel connection provided to the parcel to the east, along with that full turnaround. So the first entrance, it will be a right-in, right-out. This is the one closest to Hopeman Parkway, and the second entrance will be a full access entrance, just a little farther up King. And here again is that interparcel connection that'll be provided for any potential future development to the east. There will be a 50-foot public right-of-way with 20-foot wide streets, curb to curb. There will be no on-street parking permitted on the street due to this width, since the fire department does require that 20-foot through lane for their fire apparatus. 5-foot sidewalks will be provided with 6-foot buffer strips. Most of those will contain street trees. And there will also be sidewalks provided along the frontage with Hopeman Parkway, and all of the sidewalks in the development and the sidewalk on Hopeman Parkway will tie into the existing sidewalk on King Avenue. So here's a quick look at that road section for the development. So you've got your road, you have your buffer strip, and then sidewalk right there. And then this is another look at the overall subdivision. So sidewalk will be provided all along Hopeman, which will then tie into the sidewalk that is currently existing on King. As far as parking is concerned, there are 2.5 spaces required per townhouse units, and a total of 200 spaces are required for the overall development. 2 of the required spaces will be provided by a single-car garage and the driveway, and then the remaining 40 spaces will be provided by a shared parking area, and that's located sort of closer to King Avenue and almost central part of the development right there. Due to the development size, a full traffic study was not warranted. However, staff did request a turn lane warrant analysis be conducted. The turn lane warrant analysis did include the current residential development along with the future residential developments. So those townhouses on King, just up the street from the CUP, Smith Farm, Summit Towns, those were all considered as part of that analysis along with a 1% growth rate. The study did use 2022 traffic count data, which is the most recently available by VDOT. They also gathered turning movements in August this year. And the study did determine that there were no turn lanes or tapers required for the development. Staff asked VDOT to take a look at the study, and they did concur with the analysis that no improvements were warranted. As far as utilities are concerned, there is public water and sewer available to serve the property. A hydraulic analysis to determine demand will be submitted and reviewed by the Public Works Department to ensure those demands can be met. Another interesting thing about this property is that it does include a secondary drain field for the Heritage Hill Bed and Breakfast property to the east. This likely got put on this property due to a subdivision of the surrounding properties that happened in the late 80s. Somehow or other, that secondary drain field was included on this particular parcel. In addition to that, 2 of the subdivision's lots 34 and 35, all overlap that drain field just a little bit in the rear of those lots. Another aspect is that this being a secondary drain field, the mares are on septic, and so they're currently using their primary drain field, which is presumably on their current property. So this is a backup drain field should that primary one ever fail. And so the developer will be bringing public water and sewer closer to the mares than it is now, which would make it more possible for them to hook up to public utilities should they need to in the future. And this is a quick look at that. This is the drain field area. Mares' property is right here, and those are those 2 lots that slightly overlap that corner of the drain field right here. So staff did consult legal counsel about this. Our main concern was the need for an easement to ensure that it could be utilized if needed. And legal counsel advised that in this case, an easement wasn't needed because there was likely a prescriptive easement already in place due to the fact it was already there. And that prescriptive easement on the secondary drain field would act like a utility or drainage easement that often exist on lots. She also said that the overlapping lots are okay in this case because it is only the rear portion of the yard within the setback area, so no development could really take place right there, so you're not disturbing the drain field. And they were therefore okay with plat approval because there is no interference with or obstruction of that prescriptive easement that would prevent use of that secondary drain field. And then finally, stormwater management. The plat does show one stormwater management facility on the Hopeman Parkwood side, sort of on the eastern side of the property. Final configuration of utilities and these stormwater management facilities will be reviewed and approved during the public improvement plan phase, which is the next step in this process. They merely need to show feasibility at this point to ensure that it is possible to develop the property to the extent that they plan to. And then finally, schools. This development is within the William Perry Elementary School District and will likely increase the students for William Perry and then also the middle and high schools. According to the most recently received data from the school divisions, or the school district, which was received at the end of March this year, there aren't concerns about capacity at this time. So finally, the applicant does appear to have met the standards of the subdivision and zoning ordinances, and staff is therefore recommending approval. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
As far as that secondary drain field, so I guess the mayors would have the option of either connecting with city sewage, or if their, I mean, that's if their primary drain field fails, so they could connect with the city or utilize this secondary drain field, since that's not being built on, correct?
That is, yeah.
And the city does have requirements that you do connect to public utilities if they're within a certain distance of your home. And so, you know, I'd have to look at all the specifics, but this would be getting those public utilities much closer. And so there may be the requirement in the future, depending on if new uses or a change in use was ever envisioned at that location. But there is a provision of the ordinance that requires someone to utilize public utilities if they're within a certain distance of their property.
Okay.
I had a question. Will the exterior of the development be in conformance with the other complexes coming in across from William Perry to fit along with the King's apartments that the other one had to conform to?
So none of the previous request or this request, there are no kind of architectural details or guidelines on what the units would look like.
Okay, I just thought I read where the first one was to be mimicked to the others, to the ones that are already existing down in front of William Perry. The King's Apartments, it was like the townhomes.
I think what he's referring to is that the way it was worded was that they could use the same,
Exterior layout.
the same layout for the plan that they had in May. It wasn't a layout for the physical display of it. It was
Just,
the same general
Yeah.
layout
Okay,
Yeah.
in May with
Yeah.
a few exceptions.
okay,
When I first heard it, I thought the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, so there's no provisions within the application related to exterior, and kind of mimicking surrounding areas.
okay.
It would be up to the developer and kind of what materials they choose to use.
Okay, just curious, because I thought that's how it read as well.
Yeah, sorry, I think, yeah, it was just that the original layout, this is kind of very similar to the original layout.
Okay, well, that was all the questions I had. Thank you.
Now, can you go back to your plat map, Alisan, that shows the mayor's property? Is that the existing tree buffer, or is that a new one that's being put in to,
The existing vegetation that's there will be left to make, because there is a 15-foot buffer required. So the existing vegetation that is there will be left. If they remove any part of that vegetation, they will be required to plant new trees and shrubs according to the Class B buffer standards.
But we always encourage, that mature vegetation remain.
Yes.
because I'm just kind of curious what kind of, I know it's by right, I'm just kind of curious as what kind of impact that development would have on the mayor's business. Because with extended road right there with the anticipation of future development, it sounds like somebody's thinking that property is gonna come up for sale.
So it's a requirement within our ordinance, an interconnectivity requirement is very common planning practice that if there is surrounding development that is undeveloped or is large acreage that at any point possibly may redevelop, that you require interconnectivity so that you're not taxing your transportation network by only having one way in and out and not envisioning that there would be future connections. So the intent for the interconnectivity is never to say, oh, we know that something is changing, but if it's an undeveloped piece of property, certainly, and if it's a relatively large acreage of property that maybe would be redeveloped someday or even more completely developed, that you provide interparcel connections.
That makes sense. Any other questions from the commission?
I know that the, Mr. Mayers was concerned about the buffer, and he was in discussion with somebody with, the developer. And I think he was asking for like a fence to be put up, and then the discussion just dropped off. He never heard back from him. Is there any way to add a condition of approval that they do work together and maybe give the mayors a little more buffer or protection?
So
Just
with,
throwing that out there.
yeah, so with this being a by right development, the applicant is satisfying all of the requirements of the ordinance. Certainly, we could let the applicant speak to kind of any future plans, but as far as staff is concerned and enforcing our ordinance, the 15-foot buffer is the Class B, which would not include a fence. But if it was something that they desired to do, but there are no, this isn't a conditional request. They're meeting the requirements of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance.
Right. Were there any other questions?
No.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
All right, I will now open the public hearing, and if the applicant is here and would like to speak, I'll allow that to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Scott Williams. I'm one of the owners of Crescent Development. We are the contract purchaser and the developer of this parcel. We have worked with our engineering team and your professional staff for the last 4 months on kind of morphing this plan to make sure it meets the terms of your subdivision ordinance and your zoning ordinance. This is a by right proposal. We do meet the terms of the subdivision ordinance and zoning ordinance, and we respectfully ask that this commission approve this preliminary plat so that we can kind of move this project forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming there's no one on the,
I got one question. I'm not sure whether it's for staff or the developer. Right across the street, we just approved a thing that, development that had a proffer in it for the, community land use. Is any of these properties in that? Because if we send it forward to the city council, I'm not gonna speak for them, but if they brought it up one time, there's a good chance they're gonna bring it up again.
So just, it is confusing. The other application was a business zoned property. So it was zoned for business development and they were asking for a conditional use permit request. They could not do any residential development on that property unless they got council approval. And so then in working with council raised some concerns related to that additional entitlement, essentially that developer was trying to get for their property, and there was some discussion there. This property is zoned multifamily, so it could be it could be an apartment complex. It is proposed as townhomes, so there is no mechanism by which staff, council won't see this request because it's a by right request. So no, the answer is no, that there hasn't been those discussions because of the nature of the by right development at this location.
Okay, I was just curious.
Sure.
That seemed like a sticking point on the other one, and
Sure.
I was just wondering if it was ever discussed on this one. I understand it's by right,
Yeah.
and, you know, we have very limited, ability, but sometimes.
Is there, do you know the reason why talks broke off between, the developer and the mayors?
So, yeah, I mean, initially, the layout really couldn't be built without the easement being vacated,
Okay,
right? And so we've
Okay.
shifted things around, and so now we don't need to disturb the easement.
Okay.
So that's kind of the primary reason. I think the secondary reason is, I mean, as you can see from our plan, we are providing water and sewer to the boundary of that property line. And it is my understanding from staff that if a property is able to connect to public water and sewer and it is available, that they are required to connect. So I think the likelihood that that ever gets built as a septic field is slim to none.
Yeah. Okay. But I think probably their main concern now would be the buffer.
So it's our intent, to the extent that we can, to leave as much of that existing natural buffer in place. I mean, they haven't worked out the final grading plans yet, but if we don't have to disturb those, we won't. So that will just enhance whatever we have to do, add to it to make sure we can meet the terms of the buffer. As Leslie said, you know, a more mature tree or shrub is going to provide more of a buffer and more of a benefit quickly. So, you know, unless we have to get in there and take something down for grading, it should stay.
Yeah. I think you can understand where they're coming from, having a bed and breakfast and then all of a sudden having all these homes and people dropped in your backyard.
I understand completely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. That's the hard thing about land use. You know, it's, you know, property that's zoned, that's been an open field for a long time is, you know, I mean, you always think it's going to stay that way. And just, you know, the question about the future connection shown there, I mean, that is a connection to the mayor's property as well. So, I mean, if they decide to develop it one day, they've got access, and if they don't, it just stays there.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. All right, I will now close.
We did receive one letter, and I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but it is an individual that lives at 108 South Fork Drive. So it's kind of, Allison can show you on this map. So it's a single-family residential development that cul-de-sacs back there. And that individual is just kind of expressing general concerns about development, understanding that development, of course, is going to happen, but kind of having a measured approach to development. And then there were some concerns based on kind of a tragic fire and loss of life that happened at that house, specifically about the playground and the playground's orientation to the house. And so they noted, you know, having that playground being shielded from their home is what they would desire. And so you can see that there is buffer proposed at that location. So I just wanted to note that that was comments received.
Oh, thank you. Were there any more?
No.
No? Okay. I will close the public hearing. All right, is there a motion to approve the preliminary subdivision plat requested by Scott Williams for Crescent Development?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. Next on the agenda is review of minor subdivision and final subdivision plats approved since September 17th, 2024 meeting.
So I do have two of those for you this evening. The first is for tax map number 72-4-90, 128 South Oak Lane. So this is located way on the southern side of the city. And it's a larger parcel. And they were seeking to subdivide it into two parcels. The owner was selling them. Shows sheet. They decided to divide them into two parcels. You have a larger, I believe it's 27-acre parcel here, and then the second parcel where the house is currently located right here. That one. The second one I have for you this evening is 1009 Fry Street. This is located over on the northeastern side of the city. And this was a division of a lot in half, essentially, for a single-family house. And those are the two I have for you this evening.
Now, isn't the plats on South Oak, aren't they in the floodplain? Cause I've been through there and there's water been all the way up to that gravel road to them houses across that run alongside of it.
I believe the floodplain comes very close to this property. If it overlaps it just a small amount. But I believe most of this property is out of the floodplain.
Can you go back to the map, show the map again on South Oak?
So they were essentially dividing kind of the existing house off from the undeveloped portion of the property to sell.
Oh, so they're just selling off a piece of their land? Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So is this, Delphine Avenue extended there, the long, or is that the railroad track?
This is the railroad tracks. Right?
Okay.
Yep.
Where's the sharp turn that goes back up to Ladd Road?
I believe it's up
Is
here.
it up that way?
Yeah, I believe it's up that way.
So where is the actual property that we're discussing here, the section they're cutting
And they
off?
roughly cut it in half, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's all,
So it's,
okay,
so
it has
this-
the red, okay.
yeah. This
Okay,
sort
is
of-
that Lawrence Transfer right there in the bottom left?
I'm not sure.
But they essentially kind of divided the existing house, and then left the remainder to sell. The remainder of the undeveloped portion.
Now, can you show the next slide again? The, one that, yeah, that right there.
So you can see the division kind of goes up and a right angle back, and that's the existing home, and then the other portion is left in one piece. And there's not public sewer.
Yeah, that's correct. There's public water in South Oak Lane, but no sewer.
So they
So-
identified drain fields and proposed drain fields with the future division.
Can you point out the existing home?
The existing home is right here.
Okay. And what are they carving out? They're splitting it which way now?
So the subdivision line is right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the remainder of the property is all what's left.
So the house is now on this 10-acre parcel, right here, and the remainder of the property sort of wraps around it.
Okay. All right.
Any further discussion? Okay. Let's see, moving on. Now, do we have to vote to approve those, or have they, okay. Seeing that there's no one in the audience, I'll still open the public comment period for items not, and just unless, Jim, you would like to speak to items not on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lone survivor. I mean, he may have something to say.
I will now close the public comment period. Are there any matters from staff?
Yes, I do have a brief thing to talk about. So at our last work session with Will Cockrell, we talked kind of extensively about comprehensive planning and kind of the ins and outs and benefits of that. I just wanted to provide a little bit of an update to the Planning Commission about like next steps for Waynesboro. So we did put out a request for proposals for a firm that the city would hire to do our comprehensive plan update. We did receive 5 proposals. We have a committee of staff members and council member that are on a committee that are reviewing those 5 proposals. We provide individual rankings of those 5 proposals and then a group consensus ranking, and we will determine how many of those 5 consultants we would like to interview. Finally, a consultant will be chosen that would come on board and work with the city over a year and a half, possibly 2 years, hopefully year and a half, to develop the comprehensive plan. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that that's the process that we are undertaking, certainly one that the Planning Commission will be involved in. Our hope would be to get someone on board by the end of this year, obviously, and they would be starting kind of their data collection and outreach. And it would really probably be the first of next year that we would be kicking off, the majority of kind of public engagement. But if you have any questions about that, please feel free to let us know. But I just wanted to provide an update of kind of where we are in that process.
Are there any citizens on the committee to select the consultant?
No, so the committee to select the consultant is staff and
Okay.
Mr. Lee as a council member.
Okay.
And planning commission rep. There will be I shouldn't say will, typically, in a comprehensive planning process, there would be kind of a citizen advisory committee that might get appointed that would kind of help contribute. And there's innovative ways of doing it and different ways of doing it, but there will certainly be a lot of robust public outreach, surveys, roundtables, going out into the community. So all that would be in that, over that next year and a half.
Okay. I was just curious.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't know if its selection was kind of like what the state does for contractors. I've been involved in those.
Yes, it's, similar to that. And so there are staff members on that and Mr. Lee, and we'll work through getting a consultant on board.
Plenty of coffee or soft drink.
Yeah,
Reading those
lots of
proposals.
reading, proposals. We have been doing that over the past couple weeks.
Are there any other matters?
And then the other item is that we do plan to have another work session with Will Cockrell on,
November 6th, which is a Wednesday.
Yep.
so that is the one, we had to move it to Wednesday because it's a election day? Okay, yeah. I'm like, wait, that is that. So that's November 6th, and I believe he's going to kind of a similar style of question and answer and just kind of keep it relaxed. But he does plan to cover zoning since we kind of got cut off. And so he does plan to cover zoning in a little bit more detail and then kind of have that question and answer time.
Sounds good.
Is that at 7 o'clock or
Yes.
Yes, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
back here, I guess?
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, are there any commissioners' correspondence or communication? I personally like to thank you guys for the work on the Virginia Affordability Housing Program. That seems pretty cool, and I think would be a nice addition to the city if we can move forward with it. Anyone else? No? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn? I'll make that motion. Is there a second? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.